The word ensuring, again, is another one that says that the federal government can actually tell provinces what to do. When you looked at the HST, it was a negotiation that went on between the federal government and the provinces. The provinces have a constitutional right to set their own tax and fiscal policy. So when you go to the table, the federal government has to again recognize that what it's doing is negotiating. It can put on the table certain things. And it can say, for instance, that we would like to see as a stimulus for housing, new housing starts, new rental housing, affordable housing, let us actually take HST out of some of these things. Now the province would have to agree or disagree, because if you negotiate, you have to have some kind of equality at the table. So these are things that we would like to see come to the table. Whether the particular province in question, if one goes to an HST with the province, will agree to it, I don't know. If the HST does not pass this province, I mean, the question is what happens to that money that the federal government was going to deliver to the provinces? Should the provinces keep that money? I personally think that they should, to do what they would like to do with it, and that may be that the federal government will say, if you keep that money, you should apply to certain things. We would like to see you do that as a criteria for allowing you to keep the money or for making sure that you use that money appropriately. But it's all about negotiating with other levels of government based on constitutional jurisdictions and making sure that you do that appropriately.
Wow, well, my understanding from the campaign waged by Mr. Van der Zalm against the HST was in fact the issue that the taxation, the control over taxation shifted from the province to the federal government on this point. So, Henny, it's not that the federal government would have to negotiate. It would be absolutely in the hands of the federal government to make the changes on this. This is the public issue that's at play right now.
Adrian, Dr. Fry, I'd like Adrian too.
That's the public campaign that's out there. And so absolutely the federal government would have to, in this case, be the responsible body for the change to the HST that you are requesting as a body here in terms of equitability across the provinces, indexing to inflation, etc. It would be the federal government.
I don't generally use Bill Van der Zalm for source material, but the truth of tax policy is that provinces, look, I don't think Ottawa should impose their tax policy onto provinces. It's not a good way to go. It's not the smart thing to do. The existing legislation with regard to the option of provinces to decide whether or not to opt into an HST, which was supported by 3 of the 4 parties in the House of Commons, allows provinces that kind of flexibility. As I said in my last answer, if the province of British Columbians decide to reject the HST and to go back to a provincial sales tax, this could be part of the dialogue and discussion within the province of British Columbia. But the idea that Ottawa would impose this is not the right thing to do, for a very simple reason, that the housing dynamic that we struggle with here in the Lower Mainland, which, by the way, is a housing struggle, which is to say more people are moving here, more people want to live here. We have a great number of people. It's the greatest place in the world to call home. There are cities in the United States that would love to have the challenges that we have, by the way. You know, the challenges that we do have here, though, are not the same challenges that exist in PEI, that exist in New Brunswick, that exist in Ontario, that exist in Saskatchewan. Each province has their own tax needs, their own spending needs, and provinces should be left alone to make up those kinds of decisions. And if Ottawa imposes, it's a recipe for disaster.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I actually didn't understand any of those answers. The fact that this question is even coming up is a real example of how the HST was imposed. I mean, to me, it's very ironic that we spent most of the morning responding to your questions, and they all had to do with tax incentives and what we need to do in a kind of proactive, positive way to increase housing affordability through the marketplace. And then we get to the reality, right? What's the reality? Was that the HST was imposed. There was no transparency. The fact is that the HST started in Ottawa. It was rammed through the House of Commons. This is burned in my brain in 3 days in December 2009, because none of the parties, other than the NDP, wanted to have a debate. They wanted to get it out the way. And then, of course, we got it here in BC through the provincial legislation. So this is a very good moment to actually do a reality check, right? So everybody's saying, yeah, tax incentives, do this, work together. But then when we had a choice, when we had an opportunity to do it differently, and to be honest with people, and to be clear about what tax policy was or wasn't going to do, most of the parties failed. And this issue of the $1.6 billion, I have to say the NDP is the only party that has publicly, through our leader, made a commitment that that money has to stay in British Columbia. And there's no way as we go into a referendum that people should have that hanging over their head as to whether or not that money is going to be yanked back to Ottawa. And we're the only party that's made that commitment. So this is a very, key issue for us, and I feel the frustration that people have that we say one thing and something else takes place. So, yes to transparency, yes to actually looking at the impact of what a tax will do, like the HST, on affordability in our province. And here we're now in a bloody awful mess with a referendum because it was done so badly.